the inherent flaw. So if you're rating, say, IBM's bonds, typically IBM would pay the rating agency for the rating, say, AAA. Okay, so it creates a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
What happens with all of these derivative products is that in essence, they were the sort of investment banks were trying to say, let's put all this junk together, and if you put enough junk together and it's really diversified, well, it's not going to be junk anymore, it's going to be gold, lead into gold.
Right.
And the fees that they paid the sort of rating agencies were extraordinary relative to the kind of money they were making before, so they had a great incentive to be soft. And because the market accepted them as a sort of arbiters of last resort, and at the same time their standards slipped because they were making money over hand over fist. You just had this scenario that everyone believed in the house of cards that wasn't real.
Right. Okay. Do you have any idea, or even want to make a guess, at how much money is really sitting in all of these derivatives? Do we know?
Well, there's lots of numbers being thrown around, and there's a sort of a subtlety to it all, because certain kinds of derivatives, if it all went wrong, you wouldn't necessarily lose the face amount. I mean, it's a little bit complicated to get into it on the sort of program here, but the general idea is that in some cases, even though, like a futures contract, if somebody didn't pay pay for the sort of gold or S&P futures or corn or whatever it is they agreed to pay, the money that would be lost wouldn't be the value of the entire futures contract. It would be more like the difference between where that thing was trading now and the price of the contract. So it's smaller than the face amount, okay? So there's all sorts of numbers, but even on conservative estimates, and I don't buy them, by the way, because I think there's a lot of, again, bad assumptions, like most of the stuff that was created during the past 2 decades. You're talking in the trillions of dollars of exposure, and in some cases, there's this idea that if you buy something from B and B also buys something from you, that if in the end it all kind of washes out. Well, my view is if B goes out of business, then you have double the exposure. So the market assumes that these things are kind of netted out. And my view is you get the kind of crisis that we've been seeing unfolding, and the exposure is a lot higher than people think. So it's hard to put a definite number on it, but certainly I think the scale is extraordinary.
Well, it's so important because that's what we've got to write all that down or handle it in some way or another, and nobody knows how big it is. And so that creates this unsure atmosphere, which then, it quickly moves into panic. And when you don't know, markets don't like uncertainty, and they're uncertain about how big our debt, how big our problem really is. So how big is it? I mean, is it...
Well, in a way, it doesn't even matter. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, because it's the same issue with the value, marking to market and using, fantasy values.
Right.
If people don't know, their minds run wild, and then the sort of lizard brain, the kind that runs for the exits when the fire is shouted, takes over. People become emotional. They do, crazy things, and in a sense. When you don't know, you assume the worst, and that's the sort of human nature element to all this. Arguably, again, it's rational. I mean, if you don't know, you better be prepared. There's no